welcome to another episode of HardFoul Radio. It is day 2 of our HardFoul Marathon. This is the show that values time. I value mine. You should value yours. So let's not waste any. Shout out to today's partner, Look, Don't Touch. I'll get into that more as we go along. So, I'm not a college basketball guy. You guys know this. I don't deep dive into a lot of college basketball, college football. College sports has just never really been my thing. I'm someone that when I got into sports, I got the original, maybe it's kind of corny, but I liked being attached to players. I liked the idea of if I was a Bronco fan, like Von Miller was our guy. If I was when I became a New Orleans fan, it was like Chris Paul was our guy. I like that attachment, to the players. In college football or college sports in general, college basketball, it's really hard to get attached because college basketball, most guys are one and done, especially the era I started watching it in. And college football, it's 2-3 years. Usually a lot of guys don't play as a freshman, at least when I was starting. I know that has changed a little bit since then, but it's like 3 years and they're gone. And I've never been like a huge coach guy, where it's like, I think the coach feels like our guy. So for me, college football and college basketball has always been hard to get into. But the event of March Madness is undeniable. The event that college basketball and the college football playoffs, undeniable. The sporting world stops and everybody's watching. Like, there's a lot of, for professional sports, if you're a casual fan, if you're a casual fan of basketball, you're watching the NBA playoffs. You might only watch 7 or 8 regular season games, but you're watching the NBA playoffs. You are watching, you are there for the spectacle that is. Now, the game last night, like I said, I've watched probably about 6 to 8 tourney games this year. The game last night is proof of something that we all know exists in sports. It does not matter if you're a blue blood program, North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, or if you're one of these Cinderella stories gotten over the years, Gonzaga, St. Peter's this year. Fan bases, above all, want one thing. Don't be terrible. Do not be terrible. When you're terrible, it's not fun for the fans. It's not fun for the players. It's not fun for the community. North Carolina is one of the biggest brands in college basketball. It's undeniable. But last night, as an 8 seed, and really this entire tourney run, the way they have gotten together and rallied around this team that underachieved, had a head coach on the hot seat, mad speculation about what the program was going to do forward. They came out last night and they played their asses off, regardless of the score of the game. The ability to sit there and for that fan base, which this is a fan base that expects national titles, this is a fan base that expects consistent winning, that has expectations of being one of the 3 or 4 best programs in the country. And as an 8 seed, as an underdog, that fan base rallied in a way that was unique. Because it didn't matter that, they weren't going into that as a 1 seed. North Carolina was an 8 seed. Underperformed the entirety of the year. Like, Kansas made the big... I understand North Carolina had, in terms of the game itself, North Carolina got out to the early lead, and then Kansas came back from down 25, which was the record for the biggest comeback in a national championship game. But that itself wasn't the point. The point of this North Carolina season, what rallied this fan base together, was the fact of you just want competitive. And North Carolina, underachieving all year, rallied itself in the NCAA tournament where they were competitive, they were winning games they weren't supposed to win. A program that has that kind of expectations, a program that has that kind of history, and that fan base just enjoyed its Cinderella run. It's very rare in sports you get the combination of the brand of Carolina, which, like I said, Michael Jordan, James Worthy, all of the Tyler Hansbrough, all of the great players that have come through that school, and that school that is traditionally one of the top 5 powers in college basketball, to have the Cinderella-esque impact that they had last night, and that game went as it should have. Kansas was the better team all year. Kansas is one of the 1 seeds. Kansas rolled through Villanova, and once they got their act together, they rolled through North Carolina regardless of the score. North Carolina played above its head. North Carolina was not really supposed to be there, but between their coaching, their players rallying together, the fan base rallying together, that turned into one of the more magical moments in sports. And one of the reasons why March Madness, even if you're not a huge college basketball fan, if you are not someone who is really committed to the sport, which I'm not, not the biggest college guy, but it doesn't change the fact how magical that moment was for NCAA basketball, for North Carolina, for the sport as a whole. Fans just want to be competitive, no matter if you're St. Peter's and you've never been here, or you're North Carolina and you're one of the 5 biggest programs in the sport. Let's go from one of the biggest college basketball brands to one of the biggest professional brands. Everybody's talking about how are the Lakers going to fix this? And yes, the Lakers clearly need to fix what they're doing. When you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, you're not supposed to miss the NBA play-in game. The NBA gives you 2 additional playoff spots, went from 8 seeds to 10 seeds, and if you're the Lakers, you've got LeBron, you've got AD, you're not supposed to miss that. But everybody's talking about, well, what is the Lakers' quick fix? Well, in reality, the Lakers' quick fix was LeBron. And the Lakers, despite what we think about the franchise, this is how they've kind of always handled business. Just take out the 80s when they had Magic Johnson. Post Magic Johnson, the Lakers were not a playoff team, not super competitive, and they were not vying for championships year after year. Then they draft Kobe in 96, trade for Shaq, get 3 titles. Quick fix. Bring in Shaq, bring in Kobe Bryant. Now you're back in NBA title contention. Then there's the years post-Shaq. Kobe scoring a lot of points. They're not making the playoffs. They're not super competitive. How do you fix the Lakers? Quick fix. You go trade for Pau Gasol. You go get back-to-back titles. You're in the playoffs 4 straight years. Kobe tears his ACL, ends up having a bunch of injuries towards the end of his career. Guess what the Lakers are? Not in the playoffs, not competing for championships. They have an entire decade. The Lakers had one of the 4 worst decades, 4 worst records in the NBA during the 2010s. Quick fix. You get LeBron. You get Anthony Davis. You get a title. This is who, if you look at the Lakers objectively, and once again, big brand, arguably the most notable NBA team, some of the most notable NBA players of all time. You look at them, this is who they've always been. So now that you've got your title with LeBron, now that you've got your title with Anthony Davis, the history of the franchise shows us, that when, quick fix, you bring in superstar, get a title, you go into a down slump. And LeBron's about to be 37 years old, or 37, turning 38 years old. What do? There is no, there's currently no quick fix as in next year guy that you can put on this Lakers team. Russ's contract is too big to move at the moment. Outside of maybe you send him to one of like a bottom 5 team that's just trying to get cap space. If Anthony Davis, who is obviously, we know the talent that Anthony Davis is, but the way that his injury issues, as well as his play on the court realistically, the way he has stepped back from where he was 2 years ago when they won a title, moving him is going to be harder. LeBron's not moving because LeBron, can prove it on the court, scoring 30 points a game. Plus, LeBron likes living in LA. There's better business in LA. It's better for his brand to be in LA. And the Lakers will figure something out. In about 3 or 4 years of being mediocre, not in the playoffs, they'll have down years. This is what they've always done. Then there'll be a free agent who decides, hey, I want to go play in LA. Whether Anthony Davis is still there, that's kind of up in the air. But the post LeBron Lakers will end up with one or two guys who decide, hey, I want to go live in LA. I want to go play for the Lakers. That's going to help my brand. It's going to be good for their brand. And this is what they've always done. There is no, exclude Magic Johnson in the 80s, there is no truly long achieved stretch of success for the LA Lakers. This is what they always have done. So, like I said, our partner for today, Look Don't Touch, can have some more information coming back after the break, as well as Joel Embiid saying, why am I not getting MVP votes, or why am I not considered for the MVP? Do the writers hate me? This is Hard Foul. I'll be back momentarily. So, I wanted to talk about, I brought this up yesterday, that the MVP is a narrative award, right? And Joel Embiid did something I think is pretty interesting yesterday, is he decided, as a guy who's extremely active on social media, as a guy who is very aware of his place in the league, he decided, I'm going to take the narrative and I'm going to put it in my own hands. So Joel Embiid comes out yesterday and he's doing an interview and he says, and a reporter asked him about, where do you think you stand in the MVP conversation? And he said, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what else they want me to do, man. I just kind of feel like the writers hate me. And some people took this and it was like, well, is he complaining? Some people took this as, just, well, you're not having as good a season as Jokic or Giannis. I was very public in terms of my opinions on Giannis should be the MVP from yesterday. So, but the thing about Joel Embiid is, out of all NBA players, out of Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Giannis, Embiid, all these guys that are at that top end level, no one uses their social media accounts to progress themselves better than Joel Embiid. When Joel Embiid first came in the league, when he wasn't playing, he missed the first 2 years of his career with injury. In year 3, he only got in 40-plus games. But he was active on Twitter. He was talking to fans. He was building up a brand for himself without even having to be on the court. And then he got on the court, and he started putting up 25 points a game, and he had post moves like Hakeem Olajuwon. So not only was he able to build his brand on the internet, he was able to continue building it while with his play on the court. And so I think this was an extremely smart move for him to go, you know what, man? Yeah, I don't know what the MVP riders want. I'm averaging 30. I'm putting up 12 rebounds a game. Yeah, I guess, if you don't think I'm the MVP, you just hate me. For an MVP race where the other guys do not talk, we don't hear quotes out of Giannis. We don't hear quotes out of Luka, unless he's complaining about the refs. We don't hear stuff from Nikola Jokic. So Embiid, who understands this is a narrative award, I need sports writers to sit there and go, who should the MVP be? Well, let me think about the season. And Embiid started the season off in the front runner for MVP. And narratively, it worked. We discussed this yesterday. No Ben Simmons. Ben making himself look worse by sitting out, and the way that he handled himself with the team, and Embiid averaging 30 with no Ben. Embiid was the MVP up until, I would argue, about 2 weeks ago. Let's say 3 weeks ago. But then once Harden got in there, and Embiid has still continued to put up numbers, but he is now very well aware of, they're going to take votes away from me because they think now me putting up 30 with James here is different than me putting up 30 without Ben here. Because this whole season's been about second best player gone. Embiid still has Philly in contention for the 1 seed, and he's dropping 30 and 12 a game. Whereas Giannis had similar numbers, but Giannis had his guys. Drew Holiday's played this entire season outside of a few games. Chris Middleton's been here this entire season outside of a few games. So really, Embiid's only competition was Jokic, who was putting up similar style of numbers. And Jokic's excuse was, or the same reasoning was the same as Embiid's, I don't have Jamal Murray, I don't have Michael Porter Jr. But the difference was where they were in the standings. Embiid had in Philly close to the 1 seed. Denver has been a 5, 6, 7 seed for the majority of the year. So numbers comparable, boom, okay, they're even. Teammates both being out, all right, comparable, even. But where they were in the standings, that was the difference, and that's where Embiid had the narrative lead against Jokic for the majority of the season. But now that he's got James, and James, as we said yesterday, who is viewed as a top 10 player, top 5 offensive player, you're not going to get that same narrative look that you did beforehand unless you start trying to write your own narrative. And like I said, Embiid has been better on social media, even during interviews, promoting himself. He is excellent when it comes to speaking to the media. He knows, hey, I can start to build my own case, especially as we get down to like this last week or two. Why shouldn't I be the MVP? My numbers are just as good, if not better than Jokic. My numbers are just as good, if not better than Giannis. And I've still had to play 75, 80% of the season without a legitimate second superstar. And you could argue my second best player for the majority of this season, not these last couple weeks with Harden, is worse than Giannis' second best player, than Jokic's second best player. And then take it even one step further from there, he can make a case, and I don't think he'll go this far, but I do think we'll get some funny Joel Embiid quotes between now and the end of the season. Harden has been, what, in Philly? His first 5 games, it was great. Looked like a little mini Kobe Shaq dynamic. What has he been since those first 5 games? Barely 20 points a game on a so-so field goal percentage. He's not averaging the same kind of assist. He just has not been the same kind of offensive player that he was when he was with Brooklyn than when he was with Houston. So Embiid fully understands what he's doing. I think this is extremely tactical. I think this is extremely tactful. He's just that good when it comes to talking, playing with the media, going online. He is very well aware of his brand, his place, and he is going to do everything in his power over these next couple weeks to shift that conversation. It's not just about not having the second best guy anymore. It's not just about having the numbers. It's, hey, look at my season in totality. Hey, look at me. Because these other guys that are in the conversation for MVP, they're not going to talk. We're not going to get Jokic quotes. We're not going to get Doncic quotes. We're not going to get Giannis quotes. These guys don't talk. Embiid is taking full advantage of the thing he does better than anybody else in this league, and that is talking to the media, whether it is during an interview, press conference, or online on Twitter. Speaking of Eastern Conference teams, I understand that there's been a lot made about the Nets' disappointing season, right? Speaking of James Harden, Harden quit on the team. Kyrie refused to get vaccinated, so he was playing half the games up until about a week ago. And KD's been hurt. The Nets have essentially been the Eastern Conference equivalent of the Lakers, with one huge difference. Kevin Durant still is in the prime of his career versus LeBron James, and realistically even versus Anthony Davis. Kevin Durant, being in the prime of his career, being at the apex of his abilities, is still, and everybody knows how big of a Giannis fan I am. We just talked about Embiid. Kevin Durant is the scariest man on a basketball court. 7 foot, can shoot threes, can get 30 any single night he wants. And we still, last year, was a half an inch away from eliminating Giannis out of the playoffs with a 45-point Game 7 performance. The Nets, it's kind of irrelevant of what their record is as long as they are in the playoffs. Kevin Durant is the scariest man on the playoffs. It doesn't matter about seeding. It doesn't matter about home games, away games. The most unstoppable player currently playing the game of basketball is still Kevin Durant. That doesn't mean I'm picking Brooklyn. Brooklyn, I think, right now has the second best title odds according to Fox Bets to win coming out of the East, and they have the third best title odds of winning the entire championship. I don't think they should be that high because this team still has clearly a lot of faults. We don't know if Ben Simmons got ruled out yesterday, that he's not going to play the rest of the regular season. He's not available for the play-in. He might be available for the first round, but even more likely than that, he has second or third round availability, which if you're Ben Simmons, this whole season started on, well, mentally you weren't able to play and you weren't ready to play because of how last season ended. And now it's turned into physically you're not able to play, which, you know, if I'm a professional athlete and I've got making $25-30 million a year, and fine, maybe mentally he was broken after how last year in the playoffs ended. But if I'm going to sit out because I'm mentally not there and mentally not capable of doing it, you don't think you're going to make yourself physically ready to go as soon as that time comes? Like, this was weird when it first started. Like, you sat out the first couple of games, went to Brooklyn, fine, get acclimated or whatever. But then it was, oh, well, he's physically still a few weeks away. He hasn't played a basketball game in almost a year. But neither here nor there, I guess. But the Nets got flaws. We understand that. But in the play-in game, when it's one game, winner takes all, and I've got Kevin Durant or whoever's on the Hornets, want to say that's LaMelo, if you want to say that's Miles Bridges, or PJ Washington, if I go Kevin Durant versus Trae Young on the Hawks, like, there is no team in that 7 through 10 range in the Eastern Conference who has a player scarier than Kevin Durant. And in a one-game scenario, we see this all throughout March Madness, I'm taking Durant for the one game. The same way, and I give LeBron the same respect. Now, the Lakers don't look like they're making the play-in at all. LeBron is still good enough, even not being in the prime of his career, that if he played the Pelicans, the Spurs, those teams that are in that contention of that 7 through 10 out west, LeBron's good enough to beat them by themselves. Durant's in the prime of his career, and those 7 through 10 in the East are arguably worse in terms of team construction. Record-wise, it's all about it. It's kind of a toss-up. The top end of the West is better than the top end of the East, but if you're looking at teams 4 through 16, the East is significantly better than the West. But when you get into those 7 through 10 seeds of each conference, the East isn't that much better than the West. And if I'm looking for the best player, one-game scenario, I'm taking Kevin Durant. And then once he gets into the playoffs, who are you taking in the series? Well, we just saw if he gets the 8 seed, because they win the play-in, right now, there's a good chance he's playing either Philly, Boston, Miami. Miami, we all love and respect the culture that they have there. But Miami doesn't have a player who's close to Kevin Durant. If you were to, I think a really good rule of thumb is if you're going into a series, especially a basketball series, you write down who are the 5 best players on the court. Because basketball, unlike football and unlike baseball, or not unlike, but more so than those other 2 sports, the best player or best 2 or 3 players have more of an impact than they do than any other sport. So because of that, if I'm writing down the 5 best players in a Heat Nets series, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are probably my top 2 if they're playing Miami. If they're playing Boston, Durant's for sure number 1. Jason Tatum is probably number 2, and then Kyrie's number 3. So the high-end players who are going to be playing 35, 40 minutes, especially with Steve Nash's coaching philosophy. Steve Nash, I could coach like Steve Nash in the playoffs. How many minutes is Durant playing tonight? Fuck it, 45. He's got to get a break. Can he get like some Gatorade? Nah, fuck it, playing 45. Like Durant was playing 44, 45, and we all remember the 48 or the 50-minute game he played when they went to overtime last year against Milwaukee. If he's playing, so Philly is the toss-up because Durant would be number 1, Embiid would be 2. Kyrie, considering how he played against James, I would put Kyrie at 3, and then James Harden at 4. And if James doesn't play, and James has a history of being so-so in the playoffs and underperforming compared to when his, and this is back when he was winning the MVP and he was winning scoring titles, he has underperformed in the playoffs pretty much every year of his career. So I've got a not as talented Heat team. I have a underperforming playoff Sixers team. Or I get the Celtics, who do we credit the Celtics for having great playoff experience? This is the first year they look like they've really put it all together. Kevin Durant is a 2-time champ, 2-time Finals MVP. Him and Giannis, take your pick, best players in the league. Can score 35, 40 any given night. No one is going to want to see them in a series, especially when your second best player, Kyrie Irving, who's got a playoff resume, who's got a title, who's hit big shots in the playoffs. I don't care about the Nets record. That's not what they're going to be basing this season off of. The Nets season is going to be either won or lost or be considered a failure or success by how they do in the playoffs. And even as a 10 seed who can move up to an 8 seed, this is going to be one of the scariest 8 seeds we've ever seen because you just don't see guys like Kevin Durant in that 8 seed all that often. The Nets are scary, man. And if I'm Philly, if I'm Miami, if I'm Boston, I'm crossing my fingers. I don't got to play them in the first round. If I have to deal with the Nets, I want to play the Nets in the second or third round. The Nets are not a super deep team. They're only going to be playing 7 or 8 guys. And like I said, Nash's coaching philosophy of playing his guys super, super, super heavy minutes, I want to play them when they're more tired, they've got more fatigue. Let me catch them in rounds 2 and round 3. And I'll feel way better about that versus playing them in round 1, especially in round 1 if I see them. They're going to be coming off a confident stretch of beating 2 teams in the play-in to get to this position. Yeah. Or, if you're really smart, you have your owners start writing letters to the mayor of your city and get some new vaccine mandates. That way Kyrie can't play home games. But, to each their own. Taking a small break here. On the other side, I have bitched about baseball's problem a lot, and we got some more bitching to do because baseball has a problem that is still not being solved. And damn it, someone's got to talk about it, and hopefully someone in that office eventually gets it fixed. This is HardFoul Radio. Be back momentarily. Welcome back. This is HardFoul Radio. Once again, our sponsor for today, Look, Don't Touch, D-Spins. Super cool dude. Happy to be able to work with him. Also, don't forget, if you go interact with the Instagram post, like, comment, share, going on the YouTube videos, liking, comment, sharing. Each action gives you an additional entry into the raffle, picking out winners on Friday. We are streaming more later today on Twitch. Hoping to get started about 8 a.m. Today we're streaming to about 6, so about 10 hours. Apologies, I did pick up on, there was a slight audio issue yesterday, as well at the beginning, as well as I made the really less intelligent decision. I need to turn the game audio off when I was playing music. I realized that that conflicted with each other, so got that fixed. I just know now, need to turn the game audio off, then play the music. So I'll be playing still some of Antonio's music from yesterday because it got blurred out essentially, or mixed in with the Pokemon music, which I know we all love Pokemon music, and as well as some of Spencer's music today. Shout out to him. So yeah, looking forward to that on Twitch. Baseball has a problem, and I come on here and I only bitch. Let me make sure I want to look right into the camera when I say this. Baseball, I'm only bitching because I love you. Remember when your parents used to say that? I'm only yelling because I love you. But gosh, damn it, you got a problem. Someone needs to fucking fix it, or at least someone needs to bring it to the forefront. Baseball coverage in media is, unfortunately, in terms of a mainstream outlets, has fallen back tremendously. And there's just no need for it. You have baseball is more talented than it's ever been. Look at the top 5 list, or the top 100 list MLB Network put out. Look at the top 5 guys, or even in the top 10. Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., Vlad Guerrero Jr. Baseball is more talented than it's ever been. It has more revenue than it's ever had. Look at the contracts guys are getting. Look at the money teams are earning. MLB Network, in comparison to its brothers or its contemporaries, NFL Network, NBA TV, MLB Network, some of the best insider information, some of the best live look-ins, some of the best in-depth play analysis from former players, position, catchers, pitchers, the analysts. They do such a great job at MLB Network. There's so much talent in the game, and it still falls short on a national scale, right? Like everything I just said, you would think, oh shit, baseball's in the best spot it's ever been. You would think baseball's doing amazing. You got all that. You got more talent than you've ever had. You've got more money than you've ever had. You have a really great network covering you on a day-to-day basis. Except you're one of the 4 national sports recognized in America, and you are the 4th most popular. Think about that. The game that was called the sport that was called America's game, the 4th most popular sport in America. Hockey does bigger ratings for its bigger events than baseball does. Think about that. And hockey, not to pull this card, but hockey ain't from here. This is America's game. Here's one of the biggest problems, right? So, the interesting factor. Because if you want to be in national news, in mainstream media, you got to be interesting. And unfortunately, baseball has missed that mark by a mile. And interesting, I don't believe, is a player thing. I don't believe, because here's what I mean. You need interesting players, yes, but you need more interested marketing. The way that you market these guys, the way that you market the product is far more valuable, because then you get to find the interesting guys in baseball. Because baseball's got interesting players. But do you know what like the number one national media news related to the baseball season of last year was? It wasn't Tatis being potentially a 50-50 shortstop. It wasn't Ohtani hitting 40 home runs, sub-3 RA, winning AL MVP. It wasn't Bryce Harper's Philadelphia comeback, winning NL MVP, reestablishing himself as a top 5 player. It wasn't the several hundred win teams. No. The most nationally told story from last year, the highest peaking point of mainstream television that baseball received last year, was Stephen A. Smith saying Shohei Ohtani, him not being bilingual could be bad for baseball. That was your high point. It wasn't the amazing season Ohtani was having. It wasn't the amazing division battle between the Giants and Dodgers, both teams getting to 100 wins. It wasn't the most innovative and interesting franchise in sports, the Tampa Bay Rays. No. It was, the guy who went MVP, doing stuff we haven't seen since Babe Ruth. He doesn't speak enough English. That was your biggest peak point on national television. And I blame 1,000% to the marketing. Baseball has just missed the mark on marketing for years now. Say this, the NFL, they market the shield. The logo, the shield, the brand of the NFL is bigger than almost anything in American business, television, whatever you want to say. And it's specifically the shield and the logo and the power of the brand, because football players can retire one day and we'll all move on, no worries. When I was growing up, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, that 2004 class, Roethlisberger, Rivers, Eli Manning, were all great. They all held headlines. They all held the sports world in their hand at given points in times. And when they officially retired, we all moved on the next day, and it was no issues. Aaron Rodgers is going to retire, And we'll talk about it for a day or two, but Aaron Rodgers is not bigger than the shield. It's not bigger than the logo. It's not bigger than the brand. Tom Brady is the GOAT. And yeah, he retired for about a month, and that was kind of interesting. But Tom retired, and unless you had a Boston-specific sportscaster on your show, we talked about Tom Brady for a day or two, and then boom, we were on to the next thing. The NFL has marketed better than any other sport. The NBA made one of the smartest decisions ever could. Now, whether you like the fallout of its marketing, that's a different case. But the NBA looked at itself. The NBA had tape delay games in the 1970s. I wasn't born yet, but I can go Google. In the 80s, they realized, well, how do we get out of this? We've got more in the 80s. We got more talent than we've ever had. Baseball, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. We got Magic Johnson. We've got Larry Bird. We have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Moses Malone. Like, there are so many great players. How do we get this to the forefront of people's attention? Well, we're going to market our stars specifically. We're going to put Magic in every possible commercial we can. We're going to put Larry Bird in every possible commercial we can. We're going to put Kareem is as stoic and boring a personality as maybe the NBA's ever had. We are going to lift him up, and we are going to market our stars, and our stars are going to be the brand. Magic and the Showtime Lakers, Larry and the Dynasty Boston Celtics. Like, they figured it out. Baseball, it's up to you to figure it out. Now, we'll say this. Baseball has tried. You can't knock them for trying, but you missed. And something you should always be willing to do in business is that if you miss or realize you screwed up, tear the Band-Aid off, say screw it, move on. Baseball has had this thing, and maybe it's the inherentness that comes with being passive, right? Because baseball was, in the 70s, the biggest thing on television. It was America's game. It was bigger than the NFL. It was bigger than the NBA. It was the number one sport. And hockey wasn't even close. And because they had that position, maybe that's why they're like, okay, this works. We just have to keep being us. And then baseball in the 90s, or in the 80s and 90s, started to market its history. The most famous and well-known baseball players haven't touched a baseball field professionally in 40, 50 years. Because if I were to ask you, the NBA, LeBron comes to mind, Michael Jordan comes to mind, Kobe Bryant comes to mind, Shaq. These are all guys who have played since 96. That's pretty recent in the history of sports. If I were to tell you the NFL, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, guys who have played since 2000. If I were to say baseball, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. Oh, so the 1920 and 30s Yankees and the 60s and 70s Braves and Giants. So if I'm a 21-year-old who's into sports and I'm trying to talk to my friends, yeah, man, Willie Mays was just the greatest. I wasn't alive when he played. Baseball tried to market its history as this better than yours kind of thing. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore. Might have worked in the 70s when those guys were closer to have playing. Babe Ruth was a more notable figure in the 70s than he is in 2020. You've got a new group of stars, and you got a bunch of them. You've got a new dynamic. This is the world itself, social media, the internet. There's so many things that are done differently and can be done differently. Baseball, you got to do better. You've got all the star power. You've got multiple, like, think about this. Baseball, and there is essentially tanking. I know they don't like to call it that, but there's tanking in every sport, right? I was reading an article yesterday in regards to baseball that, too many teams are tanking. That's why there's so many 100-win teams. Yes and no. The reason why there's so many 100 wins teams, which we had 4 last year, 2 in one division. There would have been 3 that were on pace in the shortened 2020 season. There was 3 the previous 3 years as well, 2017, 2018, 2019. That's because there's just a lot of really good baseball teams who have figured out how to be smarter than the other teams, and they're collecting more talent, they're drafting better, their farm systems are better. I know it's easy to say, oh, it's a payroll thing, but the Yankees aren't one of those 100-win teams. The Dodgers, well, yes, they have an immense payroll. The Dodgers also have a top 5 farm system. The Giants have a top 5 farm system. Like, there's guys who are just in positions as executives and VPs who are just smarter than their competition, and that's why you're seeing so many 100-win teams. And that's good, because every sport is going to rely on its high-end product. For baseball, the Dodgers, the Giants, they should rely on Tampa Bay more, but that's small market and it gets kind of confusing. In the NFL, there's a reason why they go to, and a lot of generic fans didn't like the Patriots, but the NFL got to rely on the Patriots. They were a higher end product for 20 plus years. NBA, they get to rely, when the Lakers are good, it's great for the league. It's a high end product. They get to rely on the Warriors, high end product. Every sports league is going to do that. And baseball having so many 100-win teams shows you not only is the talent there, the high-end product is there, there's guys who are smart in these front offices. There was everything they need to not be the 4th most popular sport in America. Get your shit together, baseball. That went a little longer than I was expecting to. Like I said, I love baseball, and it frustrates me so much. We used to do 90 feet here, Tony and I, but it's so frustrating just kind of seeing the same things over and over and over again, and clearly baseball doesn't think they have to fix it, so why keep talking about it? Real quick, segueing back over to the NFL, Lamar Jackson came out, or his agent came out and said no. Or not his agent, because his agent's his mom. But someone close to Lamar said he's not looking for a contract until after the 2022 season. I'm hit and miss on this. Part of me, I understand it. When you're a player, especially an NFL player, who have the shortest lifespan of any active pro career, you want to get paid at your highest point. Lamar would have been better served getting paid after his MVP season, but he thought, hey, I could be even better. Plus, it was only his 2nd year starting, so he's like, I can't do it right now. So I want to get paid at my highest point. He doesn't want to get paid coming off a season in which people, and he himself probably feels like, all right, I missed 4 or 5 games. I didn't perform at my highest level. I'm not going to get the most bang for my buck in this contract if I did it right now. I also think, and this is something that a lot of owners are going to have to deal with coming up, and this is for Lamar, this is going to be for Justin Herbert, this is going to be for Joe Burrow, the Broncos, Russell Wilson. That Deshaun Watson contract, regardless of what you think about it, is going to be a factor. Like, this is not what Kirk Cousins did. Kirk Cousins took more guaranteed money, probably a little less average annual value than he maybe could have gotten. But the owners basically said, hey, that's an outlier, that's a one-time thing. The Vikings were in a desperate situation because they felt like they had the roster to compete. They just needed a quarterback, and they were willing to overpay and put this weird albatross contract together. The Browns giving Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed. They gave him a baseball contract. Lamar's going to look at that and go, well, I've won an MVP. He hasn't. I've been a role model on and off the field. There's no trouble attached to my name. Deshaun Watson clearly hasn't. I have been an ambassador for this brand and this franchise. Deshaun's new. He didn't get that contract with the team he was drafted by. And Lamar probably just feels outright, I'm better than him. So if he gets $230 million fully guaranteed, do you think Lamar's not going to try to get $250, $260 million fully guaranteed? And NFL owners aren't ready for this. They did their absolute best to try to put that Kirk Cousins contract in this one-of-one unique situation, never happen again. Except now that it's happened a second time, and there is a string of guys who are coming up. That's also going to matter a lot here because these guys are young. When Kirk Cousins got his contract, the next door of guys to get paid, Stafford, Rodgers, Brady, these guys were already at a certain point in their career where they had done contracts for so long, they're not going in there with the mentality of what Kirk Cousins got. When Kirk Cousins signed his contract, he was 27. Herbert's under 25. Lamar just turned 25. Joe Burrow's under 25. Russ is a little bit older than them, but still in his early 30s. These guys are looking at that and going, well, and let's say Russell will snap at that because he is in his early 30s. Let's just do compared by age. The under 25 or under 26 group, which is Watson, which is Lamar, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. All three, Herbert, Burrow, Lamar's got an MVP. Joe Burrow just went to the Super Bowl. Herbert's got the statistics to prove that he's the greatest quarterback ever in his first 2 years. They're going to want those same kind of deals. So I fully understand Lamar going, yeah, I'm going to wait until after this season. But after this season, when I prove that, A, I'm going to stay healthy for the entire season, I play like I did back in my MVP year, I'm going to want his contract plus some because I've been better than him. Justin Herbert, he has another great season. He's going to want that contract plus better. Joe Burrow, he's going to want that contract plus more. Been to a Super Bowl. Like, these guys that are in this age group that are going to be looking for those kind of contracts, they're going to want that $200-something million fully guaranteed. Because they know, especially as quarterbacks become more mobile and quarterbacks start taking more hits, this is no longer, you're not going to see a bunch of Brady's playing until they're 40. You're not going to see Drew Brees playing until they're almost 40. Peyton Manning's playing until they're almost 40. Like, a lot of guys are talking about it, but guys don't have that play style. They're running around more. They're getting hit more. And if I got to get hit by 300-plus pound grown men running at me as fast as they possibly can, I want my money now, and I want it up front. And because we've established that's possible with the Deshaun Watson contract, a lot of these guys will be coming for that same deal, and they're going to want more money because they're going to feel like they've either accomplished more, done more, or they're just flat out better than them. And the biggest thing to do with it is they don't have any trouble connected to him, which Deshaun Watson did, and Deshaun still got that deal. So if you are on the fence with any of these guys, that is going to be a power card for years to come. He had legal trouble, off the field issues, and he still got paid. Mike Vick had this when he got that second contract in Philadelphia. It changed that dynamic. You could no longer walk into a meeting between a player and his agent and go, well, yeah, we'd like to give you this money, but we're kind of worried. Well, Mike got a contract, and we all know his history. Deshaun just got a contract, and we know what's currently going on, 22 civil suits. You're going to see a lot of money and a lot of guaranteed money for these guys coming up. So, really excited. One of my favorite things I get to talk about, Pelicans, as we end today's show after this last break. Super excited. Something really cool happened this year, and it's just one of the best things about sports. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. about to finish up Hard Foul for today. So don't forget, go find me on Twitch, Hard Foul Game. Be streaming from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. tonight. It's going to be super fun. If you haven't, also, A&M is going to be up today. We just did an episode yesterday. I tried to live stream, but I had ran into some technical issues. But Jake joined us for that show. That was super fun, super cool. Some insightful things we got from that. As well as Look Don't Touch is our shirt of the day. Go check out my man D Spence. Go follow him on Instagram. Any likes, comments, sharing, retweets, all that stuff gets you more additional entries. Appreciate everybody that tuned in yesterday. Appreciate everybody that was interacting with the posts. Super fun week, and it's only Tuesday. It's gonna be a great week. So something happened with Twitter and a fan base, and I absolutely love it. This is one of those things that makes sports beautiful. Sports are irrational. The love of sports I could almost qualify as weird. To have this irrational affection for a team or a group of players who you've never met, don't know you, and to be just so infatuated with them essentially, and like just this weird kind of love thing that you could, it's easy to classify that as weird, right? But we love it as sports fans, and we know we're weird. We know we're fucked up. And, excuse me, one of the best things we get, one of the best feelings we get, is when a player embraces a team. Brandon Ingram deserves an MVP vote. All I've heard as a Pelicans fan is Zion not playing, Zion doesn't want to be there, move the franchise. Well, Ingram, who got there the same time as Zion, has done everything in his power, and his demeanor, the way he handles himself, he's wanted to be there. He's played his ass off. He signed the mega contract. He's talking to guys. He's trying to recruit guys. He has embraced New Orleans in every which way, and it's just one of the coolest things to see. I mean, New Orleans is going to be in the playoffs this year. I don't know if you don't follow Pelicans very much, which I understand, they don't make playoffs that often. And despite the Zion noise, despite they should relocate the franchise, despite all of that, for him to come down there, embrace that group, keep putting his arms around them, he works his ass off every day at practice, and he's missed some games. He's not a perfect player. But the chemistry that he's built with everyone, and then even as CJ McCollum has come in, like, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. There's a real funny rivalry between Kendrick Perkins and Pelicans Twitter, and it turned into this, like, Perkins was very outright in saying, like, oh, Zion don't want to be there, move the franchise. He was one of the loudest people giving that narrative, and Ingram just kind of took it and said, okay, bet, we'll show you. And even they beat the Lakers twice in 10 days. And there's a funny video of Ingram, and I don't even know, and I don't think there's an issue with Ingram and LeBron, and I think Ingram might not like the fact that, he was traded away from the Lakers initially. But like I said, he's embraced New Orleans so much. There's a funny clip of him going, LeBrick. That's understanding the moment. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean he's a troll. It doesn't mean he hates LeBron. It doesn't mean he even hates the Lakers. But he understands the city and the fan base that felt jolted by the NBA and felt essentially fucked by the NBA and the Lakers, that their star player, who they had before, Anthony Davis, who did not embrace the team in the same manner, who did not show the same kind of rah-rah peppy attitude, and said, hey, I want to go to the Lakers, I'm making it public, you can't do anything about it, deal with it. They felt jolted, they felt screwed over, they felt fucked by their star player and the Lakers. And so he understood that moment, and when they beat them twice in 10 days, and that second time in Staples, and for him to shout LeBrick, and for it to be on camera, he understands who he's playing for. He understands the fan base. He understands what he means to that fan base. That's beautiful. When you have a guy, like I said, who truly embraces the culture, He wants to be there. He's interacting with the fans. He's recruiting guys to the team. And this is all while not only the talks of relocation, which are mostly narrative points by the media, not only while Zion Williamson, who was the celebrated first overall pick, who missed an entire season and has missed over 50% of the games he could play in. This is a team that just had Anthony Davis leave a few years ago, being forced out by trade. All this is going on. And Ingram says, hey, I got you. I'm going to be the star player. I'm going to be the guy who gets you 24, 25 a night. I'm going to be the guy who now even plays defense. I'm going to pass the ball. I'm going to rebound better. I'm going to improve my whole game just to show y'all I fuck with you. Like you said, sports are irrational. The love of sports, you could even qualify it as weird. But that's one of the coolest things in sports is Brandon Ingram's transformation and his love and his overall connectedness with New Orleans, that city, that franchise, that fan base. Brandon Ingram deserves an MVP vote. Hey, man. We're going to be live on Twitch today, HardFoul Gaming, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come check me out. It's going to be great. We're going to be hopefully finishing off our Diamond Nuzlocke and then getting into some Arceus. Also fixing some audio issues from yesterday. And appreciate you guys all for tuning in. This is HardFoul Radio, the show that values time. I value mine.